So this is our ethics and world religion group presentation. It's our introducing post. So I'm Paige Rosa. My hometown is Warrenton, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philly. I'm currently in Nashville right now. My favorite movie is 10 Things I Hate About You, like the, enemies to lovers storyline is good. And, Heath Ledger's character was, I like the part where he's like sings to, Julia Stiles' character.
Right. I am Baker Lockhart. Um, I'm from Brentwood, but I live in Nashville now. And then for favorite book, I have In Retrospect or The Coddling of the American Mind. Um, and then what I wanted to see for this class was just a dive into the ethical side of religion, more specific into religions, not such a philosophical view, which is kind of what this class was. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Amira McCall. I'm from Oliver Springs, Tennessee, and I'm also in Nashville. My favorite movie is Rush Hour because it's a good mix of action, comedy, and I love Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. So,
And my name is Hannah O'Connor Spicer. I'm from North Andover, Massachusetts, and right now I'm in Haverhill, Massachusetts. I put my favorite book as The Yellow Wallpaper or Stoner, just because I feel like those were like the first two books that really like made me cry. Which is kind of like embarrassing to say, but yeah.
All right, so then we're moving on to our religions happens post. So this is just, this is the prompt and, just talking about our background and our religious stuff and, what kind of brought us to our current religious stuff. So I was brought up Roman Catholic. My mom was raised Roman Catholic, and my dad was raised in different types of Christianity. But he was mostly down south, so any of those. We went to mass every Sunday, and then we had our prep every Wednesday during school years. And then now I go to a non-denominational church in Franklin, which is Church of the City. But yeah.
Mine's kind of similar. I grew up in a Roman Catholic household, and my parents were strict at first with religion, and then having two siblings and playing sports, we got out of a lot of Sunday school type stuff. And then my kind of views on religion changed a lot with spending a lot of time in the Middle East and how everything operates over there. So yeah.
I grew up going to a Baptist church. Both my parents were raised in church, and my dad is a deacon, and he's been serving since I think 71, and my mom is a deacon's wife, and we went to church every Sunday, morning and night, and we would also go Wednesday. And my dad helps with R2R, and my mom helps in the nursery, so they all help with the church community.
And I was also raised in a pretty religious household. It was very strict, especially with my mom. She was Catholic and my dad's Protestant. And religion has always been like a big internal battle for me. Trying to like put myself in the box that my mom like wanted me to be and how I could never really like reach those expectations that she wanted. And I went to a Christian prep school for most of my education, and that kind of exposed me to a lot of hate, and that just kind of fueled this like huge identity crisis that I was having. And then it wasn't really until I was out of private school and in college, after losing a really close friend of mine to suicide, that I was exploring my religion more and how like I didn't have to really be in like a specific box and that labels weren't a necessity for that kind of thing.
No, I was just pretty much like saying like that's, tough losing a friend and, trying to keep your religion. I know I've had those times and I've seen, one of my best friends like go through that, um, losing her dad senior year. So it is can be really tough.
Yeah, it was really hard, but it kind of opened me up to like re-exploring, like talking to God and what faith really is to me.
Hmm. I think Baker, that was really cool that you could like, you know, see another religion, even though like, you were raised one way, you were able to be like immersed in it, right? You're like over there. Yeah, that's awesome. So the group essay one, we talked about the intersection of Swifties and religion. So I just was talking about like kind of how she started off. She started off in 2007 in Nashville, opening for another country music artist. So she started off in country and then moved to pop, and now she's kind of staying in the indie folk, but also recreating some of her older records. She's broken other artists' records and even her own records. She had a most streamed album in a single day on Spotify, which broke her own record. And then so she has been on the Eras tour, and last I checked, it was over 1.4 billion in sales and probably rising. And a lot of her Swifties, which is her fans, are obsessed with her, and so they travel from all over, try to get to her concerts, and they pay a lot of money, to see her and all that kind of stuff. And they do the outfits, which is like super, super cool.
So my portion of that essay was more focused on the following she's created with her business model and how it connects to most modern religions and in the aspect of not I mean a cult following is the way it was described online, but it's just almost a blind faith kind of following, which is having blind faith is one of the core principles in most religions, and having that faith. And that was mainly her business model, was creating that loyalty with her fans without actually knowing them. And I think that connected a lot with a lot of modern religions.
My part of the essay talked about Taylor touring because we talked about the Era's world tour, and touring has increased Taylor's fan base. Just being able to connect with people around the world, they've not only been able to connect with her but also to her music, and she has really been able to adapt to different cultures and environments, especially when touring. And she's also been able to adapt to the constant change that the world brings her in order to still stay relevant because she's probably one of, if not the biggest pop star today. And talking about her reputation, she released an album in 2018, and that album was a statement to not let others define her because it was talking about how people perceived her. And in a way, she reinvented herself because that album was big because she was kind of switching from country to a different genre. She went to pop, and now she's indie. And that relates to us with our witness. Like the way Taylor adapts, so can we. And in order for us to stay relevant with our beliefs and religion, we have to be able to talk to others and understand their morals, beliefs, and their values, and daily life as well. Yeah.
And then my section kind of focused on her fan base as well as the social impact that she has on like different areas of social issues. And I was talking about how her music impacts her fan base like beyond like the actual songs, and how she speaks out on the importance of voting and how her discussions on it have directly impacted voter registration numbers. They increased significantly after she discussed them. And then she also created a massive platform for herself as a young woman, which kind of, created this belief that like young girls, like they can do it too. She discusses relevant issues like impacting women and girls both in and out of her music. That, even ones that are really difficult to talk about sometimes, she kind of created this safe space for many people where they can come together on like their own experiences and their shared beliefs, and that has created a community for them, which we can relate back to religion and like the basic foundations that all are created on. And like Baker said, I also kind of mentioned the like idea of her Swifties being a cult, how a lot of tabloids have discussed that and called her that, kind of like as a almost as a way to like drag her in a way, I think, in her fans. But if we take the like negative connotation away from that, it really is just like setting up this like massive community.
Yeah, I can see how it is seen in a bad light, and like the amount of money being like poured into, even like the ticket sales, been crazy. And, a lot of people are saying like, it's definitely a cult, but, you know, just to those people, it's built a community and, a way for them to like create a friendship with people like they probably wouldn't have, created before.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's definitely created this place where people can be more themselves when they can't feel like that in like other areas of their lives.
So the group essay number 2 just asks a question: how can religious teachings and principles be effectively utilized to address and mitigate corruption within leadership? So I picked Judaism. Its ethics emphasized, justice, charity, and like, kind of like helping with the world. Judaism, it provides like their teachings and, their principles. They provide a rich array of all of them, and, really describe them a lot. The Ten Commandments are a big one. I list them. They're in Exodus. And it's pretty much trying to give a groundwork of, what, the Jewish people should be, following, like the rules they should be following. Like, some of them are, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit, adultery, thou shalt not put, other gods before me, and things like that. And, I feel like that provided a great framework, and, how the Jewish people need to follow those rules and, be, very religious, good in their religion. And they pray 3 times a day, so morning, afternoon, and evening, and that kind of gives them time with God, and, how to discuss, you know, with, their God, and how to go about, their everyday things, and to thank them for the opportunities they have, especially with leaders. It's important, for them to kind of pray and talk with God about, what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and, help them out. They also have Shabbat or Sabbath, which is, the seventh day. Um, and not just a break from work, a time to just rest, come together as in their communities, and, eat, and, just kind of reflect on their week. And it's good for leaders, obviously, because it gives them a day to kind of like be done with whatever they need to do. And, not be as stressed as, I'm sure leaders do. And time to come with their families, which is super important. The Torah, it contains, the first couple of books, in there, um, like Exodus, which is where the Ten Commandments are, and those have like a lot of the rules, and, the teachings, and how God expects, the Jewish people to behave, and, ways they can, leaders especially can read those books. And, in their education system, they have the ethics of the father. That is a great way for them, a lot of the leaders, to follow like rules and find rules, and how they need to lead in a godly way, and, the way of, their religion.
So I had Islam, and the biggest piece to that, to the Islamic religion and ethics and anti-corruption, you can see is their Sharia law, which to Page's point is similar to the Ten Commandments in that it's a code of ethics. The issue with um, some of the groups within um, the Muslim faith is the fact that it's all misinterpreted. So it can be interpreted in so many different ways, Sharia law, and for some of them, they have ethics and laws as the same thing. So that's where you see a lot of the corruption within the Islamic faith, and this kind of gets swayed by the less than 1% that you see on the news from radical groups. So I thought it was interesting that they represent, I think it's like 0.01% of the faith. Yet, if you were to look online, that's going to be the first thing you see is the corruption from that side. And it's all from, perception is reality, to a lot of people that see this faith. And this isn't to bash the religion, because I would say, 99% of this religion is peaceful and not corrupt, but it's ruined by the less than 1%. And it's a lot of their ethics come from Sharia law that is just misinterpreted by the minority.
I talked about Southern Baptist, which is a Christian denomination. Similar to Judaism, the Ten Commandments are a core teaching of God, as well as the Golden Rule in Matthew 7:12. And I talked about the Good Samaritan and his actions of helping someone, because the Good Samaritan was someone who was the least likely person to help in that scenario. And it demonstrates the actions of how God wants us to treat other people as well, such as leaders being able to help other people and be there. And the Ten Commandments is a good core teaching for leaders to follow, because if you're in God's will and you're following his teachings, then there won't be as much corruption. Same goes for the Golden Rule, is to do unto others as they do unto you. And everyone can apply the principles of the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rule, especially leaders. And this will help when you're faced with moral or ethical situations. It also says to train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he's old, he will not turn from it. So when you teach kids to follow the Ten Commandments, not even kids, it doesn't matter what age you are, when you start to learn in like faith or religion, once you are taught, you won't forget. And these morals become a part of like a person's character and how they want to live, and being able to see Jesus as your ultimate guide will help you become the character you want to be. And this is how leaders can follow Jesus's teachings and his guide.
So then my section was on Catholicism. The home of the Catholic Church is in Vatican City. So there's a big intersection with the governing of Vatican City, as well as control of the church, which is all held by the Pope. And canon law is a set of like legal rules that apply to the government of Vatican City, but there's also an overlap with the church. My section of the paper mostly focuses on the idea of like abuse of power that's rooted in the Catholic Church in Vatican City, and how there are a set of morals in Catholicism that do play a role into these actions based on what I read. Kind of like that these morals are putting pressure on people, and there's a lot of stigma that results in like poor actions. And then the church and the government then tries to uphold the image of themselves and their followers and their people, by trying to cover up the wrongdoings that have been done. Pope Benedict is like a really good example of someone using their power to abuse it. And he was feeding into a lot of the abuse, covering it up, refusing to speak on it, and then moving priests to like different areas, when they were caught doing something that was, awful and devastating, that was harming children and people and nuns, and then just kind of sweeping that under the rug in order to uphold their image. And Pope Francis is not, that much better, but there's definitely small steps that he's taking towards trying to make the church more inclusive, to do right by those who are being abused, to make people feel more comfortable in the church, but that the overarching idea of abuse of power is deeply rooted in the history of Catholicism, and that there needs to be a change in morals and how things are handled in order to really stop having as much corruption as there is. And not to say that the Catholic Church is bad, like my whole family is very Catholic, very Italian, but it's like you can't really turn a blind eye to what's happening. especially here in the United States, like Pennsylvania, for example, had, over 300 victims in a church in a different churches within that like state alone that had to come forward, and there was a huge, you know, case regarding that. I was gonna say, like on Baker's topic, I think like the idea of interpretation can apply to all of ours, and also the idea of radicalism is a huge issue where people can interpret things differently and then use that to push their own agenda and masking it as this religious identity.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with when Baker, when you talked about like how you search it up, that point, like, 1% or what, like it definitely ruins it for the rest of the people. And, but a lot of people will just look at that surface level and just be like, no, that's not a good religion. But when you actually look into it, like you said, like, it is good. So it's a good, got a good base of, ethics and, practices and things like that, important to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which that, I mean, that pretty much leads into um, the last discussion board we had, which is the Christian supremacy and spiritual abuse, which I think this paper kind of touched on most of those. Um, but I think with mine specifically, I'll go ahead and go first with that. But the the definitions I thought were pretty spot on in his book. I just think the Christian supremacy, I think, I mean, it's all religious supremacy. I don't think there's a single religion out there that doesn't think we're the best religion or, we're the only religion. I think a lot of religious texts speak on them being the only religion. And, every other God is a false God. So I don't think it's just a US thing. I think Christian supremacy is a US thing, or really just the West, but just religion supremacy in general is everywhere. And that, I mean, spiritual abuse, it's kind of rooted in how these texts are written about being the only religion. So, if that's what you believe in, obviously this spiritual abuse is going to happen because you're only going to believe what you believe. Your perception is your reality.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because how you perceive what you learn and how you learn to understand what you believe is how you will live your life. And I definitely agree with the definitions. And I think people are weaponizing religion. I think Christian supremacy and spiritual abuse are both definitely an issue, but like, I think the way that people go about telling the gospel to people is like they're not doing it in a loving way, and it's just like, oh, you're going to hell, and it's just like that's not the way you should treat people, and that's not the way you should tell them, because I guarantee the people who say that, oh, you're going to hell, like if someone told them that, they're not going to like that. So it's just like that's not good. And I mean, same with social media. Like I've had like ads or like posts pop up on social media where it's like, oh, if you want to be a good Christian, then you have to do this, or like you have to follow this. And like I even had someone, like my friends and I were at the mall, and this guy came up and asked us to buy cookies. And then after he asked us to buy cookies, we were like, "No, thank you." He was like, "Can I pray for you guys?" And we were like, "Yeah." And so it was a nice prayer, but then at the very end he was like, "If any of these three girls die today and they're going to hell because they're not saved." And it was just like I just think that's the wrong way to go about it, because like he didn't ask us if we were like religious in any way. He just like automatically assumed that. So it's just I would put that under spiritual abuse and Christian supremacy. So it's just like I think the way we're going about it is wrong, but again, perception is reality. So
I think to touch on that real quick, the social media piece. I think in my post I talked about how it's kind of both ways because you know, you get the supremacy complex from it, and the abuse from the social media, but it also can open people's eyes a little bit more and be more informed um, on different issues.
definitely.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll go back to to mind. So I think agree with the definitions. I think at first, definitely seeing this discussion post pop up, I felt, very defensive because I'm like, what? It sounded very like a very negative, post against something, that's my religion that I grew up and still like, practice and, but, after that first wash of just kind of like very defensiveness, was like, well, I'm gonna keep it, open mind. This is what, pretty much this whole class has been, about and learning, especially about different religions. And I've always tried to keep an open mind about, what people think and just listen it out. So when I read the definitions, they're definitely, I feel like a little harsh, but I think it's important to talk about. I think, a lot of people have different experiences and, I think there is a problem in, how many people approach, other people and, how they want, their religion. I really liked his, mantra of like, nobody's an authority in someone else's experience. Like, you know, you don't know someone until you walk around in their shoes. So like, and even then, like you're not the same person. You don't know the experience, you don't know their feelings, you don't know how they feel about, the Christian, faith and, and Catholic, it's hard, and a lot of people on the streets with the sign saying you're going to hell, like, like Amira says, it's not the way to approach it because that's such a negative thing to be like, yeah, you're going to hell because of my religion, you're going to hell. And it's like, why would I want to join your religion if you just told me you're going to hell or I'm going to hell or whatever, And I think a lot of people try to hide behind Christianity and call, themselves Christians and they don't really embrace Christianity. They're like, I'm a Christian, but I'm gonna still do like bad things, or I'm gonna think bad things about you, I'm gonna say bad things about you. And I think a lot of, you know, politicians and leaders and things like that also hide behind it to be like, oh yeah, I'm, a Christian, leader, I'm a Christian but they don't really follow through, with that belief system and things like that.
Yeah, I think those are all really great points and pretty similar to a lot of the stuff I said. Um, I also agreed with the definitions that were in the book. And then weaponized religion is a growing issue globally. Like we see that in so many different areas of the world. But I think when I was reading it, I was focusing more on the US and like the state that we're in right now. And I really do think like Christian supremacy and spiritual abuse are very rampant in the US and that we're seeing like Christian values like very much invading the political realm of America right now and how those are being pushed on more and more people and that they're directly impacting the lives of those who have no interest in that faith. And then kind of like the idea of like why can we allow for the values of one religion to control the lives of everyone in this country? Just with like different like political agendas that are being pushed and like all the like different controversies and debates and all that stuff, but also like focusing more on this quote from page 72. It's like kind of long. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but it was the one about taxpayer funded form of terror, talking about Christian supremacy. And I just think that like the idea of preaching about the Bible online and preaching about the Bible in on national television and then targeting minority groups with hate is just like extremely ironic to me. I don't really see like how that's okay. And then also like I think kind of like connected to what Paige was saying, kind of putting on like this hateful, boisterous appearance, and then how do you expect someone to want to follow that when you're telling them that they're bad or they're going to hell just because of like who they are as a person? I think that there's just so much hate being thrown in our faces and that it's like interfering with so many people's lives.
And that's why I think witness is so important because, like, not only does it represent you fully as a person, but it also represents your religion. Because I know so many people who are like, majority of people who like know Christians or people who go to church, they just think they're awful because of the way they act and like what they say. And I've had so many of my friends, like, people have sat them down and they're like, oh, well, because of your sin, you're going to hell. And like because I live near the Knoxville area and I'll drive from Nashville to my house and like I'll just see signs and it's like, you're gonna meet God one day. or and then it's like if you're not saved, you're going to hell. I'm like, bro, I'm like that's wild, and it's like call 1-800-TRUST-GOD or something, and I'm like what? And I think that goes to preaching fear into people. Like that's how my parents were raised because they were used to like the preachers preaching fear into you, but at the same time, it's like it just doesn't work. Like it's just not that's not the way to go about it anymore.
No, I definitely agree because those signs, like I drive from Massachusetts down to Tennessee, so I'm driving through Ohio in like the middle of nowhere, Ohio, and it's just like you're burning in hell, you're gonna die, marriage is for men and women, and it's just like I'm just trying to drive to school. Like I don't know what I did to deserve this,
It's like
but
not a peaceful drive. You're just driving
no,
and you're like,
I'm terrified, I'm shaking.
yeah, it's like okay.
It's like a lot of propaganda. I'm like, why would I want to? You're literally, I'm just minding my own business driving on this highway, and you're telling me I'm gonna die and go to hell today.
Yeah, it's like you're gonna meet him one day, then you're gonna go to hell. It's like what?
Like, okay, thanks for that. It's just like so much all at once. It's
Yeah.
hard to wrap your head around all of it. But I think that there's just so many like negative connotations and labels that people just automatically assume both ways, that it's just creating more and more problems. I know so many people who are Christian and like very dedicated to it who don't feel the things that like I was exposed to when I was younger, and they respect everybody and then I respect them, and like having friends of like all different religious backgrounds, like there is some sort of overlap where we can have common ground. It's
Yeah.
just like the media doesn't show us that. Social media just wants to show everybody fighting with each other.
Yeah.
So just doing the class takeaways. So I thought it like this class it contained very like thought-provoking, discussions and the things we read. And I liked how we started off with like redefining like religion, or like I guess not necessarily redefining it, I guess he defined it, and it just kind of like in my head, I thought religion was just, Christianity, Judaism, Catholicism, Islam, like Buddhism, like all that kind of stuff. Like that's what I thought, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean those. It kind of expanded it, which also I feel like expanded the way and like reframed the way I approached, all of it through the class. And I felt like I was able to expand my mind and examine my religion and just like have an open mind about others. And um you know and I feel like I'll be able to take away some good thoughts, and be able to re-examine myself and others, and just keep an open mind as I go through life, and come in contact with other religions and other beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think the readings for this class were the biggest highlight for me. I think this class would be a lot more enjoyable in person to have these actual discussions. Because I mean, you get tired doing discussion boards. Um, I wanted it to dive more into the specifics of certain ethics and religions, and not the philosophical, look at religion as a whole. But I think it was still good, and the readings really made you think.
Yeah, I agree with Paige, this class challenging me as to what religion can be perceived as because I now have a much more open mindset about it. And it's, it, like, it could just be a higher power or, like, such as God or, Taylor Swift, or it could be something simple as video games or basketball. It's whatever you put your main focus and energy into. I really like that this class challenged me a lot, especially with the discussion posts, because one of the questions that got me was, in what sense is it the case that to understand religion or religious language is to misunderstand it? I had to read that like 4 times because I was like, what? But I like how it challenged me to think and really dive deep into what I knew and what I learned and how to and learn from other people and read their posts and be open. And it really, I think it helped with my apologetics as to why I believe what I believe, and it also expanded my knowledge because I was like, wow, like I really don't know a lot about religion as I thought I did.
Yeah, I like really did enjoy this class, kind of different from what Baker said. I liked the philosophical aspect of it more than like the clear-cut religious discussion. I didn't really know what to expect when I saw like the life's too short to not be religious thing. Then like by the midway point and after, reflecting on my own experience and my own beliefs on my own religious identity and exploring the different definitions, I feel like that made a lot more sense to me. Um, as well as like being able to discover my own myself more and feel more valid in how I discuss like my own identity. But I did really like the philosophical aspect and like how we could kind of dive more into like the deeper meaning of things, because that's kind of like the stuff that I enjoy doing on my own time. I read like a lot of Camus and Dostoevsky and Kafka. So I kind of like the vibe that kind of makes you think, what am I doing with my life? Why am I here? Why is all of this happening? So I liked that part of it, and I thought that the readings were all really interesting. So I feel like we had like pretty good discussions. I feel like a lot of us, I feel like we agreed on a lot of things in a way, but also we're coming at it from like different perspectives. So we all have different backgrounds, which I feel like is a big topic that we discussed, how, everything has a common foundation. It's just kind of how you approach it.
Yeah, I think it was good that we did agree, but also like you said, we all had different ways of coming at it. I think just because like of our different like life experiences, like most of us were raised Catholic, Christian, like Baptist, like whatever it is, it's kind of close, but we all had different ways of, you know, being raised slash coming out of that, slash like experiences like, Hannah, like you were like questioning this and, especially with the loss of your friend, you were able to find something that worked for you that would, felt better for you Baker with your experience, going over to Islamic countries and things like that. I think you're able to you're able to open your mind better, and actually go in and experience that. Like, for me, researching the whole Judaism thing, it was like really, really cool to learn about, but I could only research it. I didn't have anyone to like go, or I didn't have like a place to go into to like really experience that. And it's a mirror with your parents being deacons. I feel like that's totally different than, me just going with my parents to, Catholic mass.
That we're all from different backgrounds, but we have similarities, but also are very, like, I feel like we taught each other a lot, like, especially in this presentation and the discussion as well. But I feel like I learned a lot from you guys.
Yeah, same here. I feel like it kind of made like open my mind up to even like more ideas of like how I can further explore my like myself based on like what you guys have shared and what other people in the class have shared.
Mhm.
For a class that's, a requirement, having a religious requirement, it's a really enjoyable course. And it doesn't feel like it's just a requirement course. It's it makes sense that it's, a mandatory course to take.
Yeah, but I feel like I actually like learned stuff rather than just trying to pass it.
Yeah, exactly. You actually get something out of this class.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.